Thanks for joining us on Discover Marshalltown. I'm here with Kyle Martin, who's the program manager at KFJB here in Marshalltown, Iowa. And Kyle, could you talk a little bit about what you do at the radio station?
Well, besides getting up really early, and that's kind of how we start the day as a radio announcer, because I have two roles. I do the morning show and also as program manager, program director at KFJB. My day starts about a little bit after 3 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday. Get up and get going. I live in Grinnell, so I drive up from Grinnell. I get to the radio station, probably a little bit after 4 o'clock, and I get ready for the show, which starts at 6 o'clock. So I have a couple hours of show prep where I'll edit interviews and kind of set up the way I want my show to be. Mm-hmm. I do that every day. I go through each hour and I kind of say, well, I'm going to talk here. We're going to do this segment here. I'm going to do this interview here. So that actually takes, probably 40 minutes or so to kind of plan out the show. Do the show Monday through Friday, the morning show, and then after I get off the air, a lot of people think that as a radio announcer, you just go home. You're done. They're like, oh, I'd love that. You work a couple hours or 3 hours and then you go home. A lot of it after I get off the air is either staff meetings or do commercials. I do a lot of voiceover stuff, a lot of commercials, and I'm also in charge. Something fairly new that I'm in charge of is the news department. So I'm now in charge of the news department, and not being a news person, that creates a kind of a new challenge for me.
Okay. And this transitions well into the next thing I wanted to ask you. As far as working at a radio station, you also teach for us out here at MCC. I'm in charge of our broadcasting program and teach some of the media and especially the video and television production classes, but you come out as a industry professional and teach our audio production class. What's that been like for you?
I like it. It's been very rewarding for me, and it's kind of, some people, I think some instructors, I can't speak for all instructors, but maybe it's a little more stressful for them. This is something that I do every day as an adjunct professor out here. So I literally do what I'm teaching the kids every single day with audio production. And I often tell the kids that if you can cut and paste, you really can learn how to edit, whether it be audio-wise or I'm guessing video-wise. Video editing's changed a little bit since I took broadcasting in college, but I mean, it's not that difficult, and I think anybody can master it and learn how to do it. And it's something that you, as a broadcast professional, if you decide to take the next step, whether it be radio or television, you're going to have to know how to do these basic skills that we teach here. Whether you teach it on the television side or I teach it on the radio side as far as editing is concerned. To circle back to your question, I thoroughly enjoy teaching the kids.
Okay, well, it's great to have you here teaching, and it's just been a great relationship having Marshalltown Broadcasting Incorporated, I believe, is kind of the parent group that oversees Kicks 101 and KFJB and maybe some other radio stations. But we have a great relationship with your station, and we hope to continue that in the future.
Yeah, it's been fun. We've been really blessed. As far as you kind of alluded a little bit to our company, and I can tell you a little bit about our company. We our particular company, Marshalltown Broadcasting, has been here in the community since 1923. So, and actually, if you want to even kind of go back a little further, radio was in its experimental stages on KFJB as early as 1919. So broadcasting and KFJB and Marshalltown Broadcasting have been in this community in one form or another since 1919. So it's been a great a relationship with the community, and I don't know that people in our community realize what an iconic radio station they have. There are not too many radio stations that have been on the air longer than KFJB, or that have had the exact same call letters as KFJB. I'm sure most of the stations you listen to in Dubuque growing up, they've changed call letters, they've changed formats. We've changed formats a little bit over the years, but the call letters have remained the same since we were granted our broadcast license officially in 1923.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the history, because it's a pretty amazing history here in the community, having KFJB, having so many years of broadcasting and service to the Marshalltown community and keeping people informed and entertaining people.
Absolutely. As far as maybe some of the early broadcasting days, we were at one point part of a network called the Tall Corn Network. I love that, the Tall Corn Network. We also took news feeds from other news agencies, ABC, CBS, NBC Radio over the years. And we also, like I said, part of the Tall Corn Network. So we have tried really hard to keep the community informed, whether it be nationally or with our local news department. And we have had a local news department since the very beginnings of KFJB.
Okay, great. Well, there's a few other things I need to talk to you about, but I thought we'd talk to our producer, Craig Swartz, and see how much time we have left for the second segment. And you're watching Discover Marshalltown. We'll be right back after this.
All right, what do we got?
Just came in. Heart attack. 5'9", 300 pounds, 32 years old.
How the hell does that happen?
Can I get a, Could be developing diabetes. Let's make a change. Oh, yeah.
You're graduating! Watch TV. You won't even have to leave.
You can't do this.
Yes, can I get a...
Yeah, no, deep tissue.
You have to make a change. Good job, Jim. You got an A+.
Here are your fries, sweetie.
I still can't believe you give this child French fries.
I know, but it's the only thing that'll make him stop.
Welcome back to Discover Marshalltown. I'm Steve Muntz, and I'm interviewing Kyle Martin from KFJB Radio today. And Kyle, we talked a little bit about the radio station, the history of the radio station, and your role at the radio station. Let's go back a few years when you were growing up, and how did you get into radio?
Well, it's more than a few years ago, Steve. I grew up in a radio family. My dad was on the radio. He was actually originally on KSO radio in Des Moines in the early 60s. And then we moved, after I was born born in the mid-60s, we moved to Denver, Colorado, where my dad did a morning show in Denver, Colorado, and was on the radio for well over 35 years in Denver. And, it's a major market. And I would listen to my dad drive into school, or my mom would drive the carpool, or we go down the highway and I'd see my dad on a billboard on the side of the road, and I thought, wow, that's my dad. That's amazing. And then when I got a little bit older and I could drive, I would go down to the radio station where my dad worked, and I'd sit there and I'd watch him on the radio. And this is a perception of radio, is that they really don't do anything. And I kind of thought the same thing. I thought, oh, that looks really easy. But my dad would literally sit there, read the paper, And then he had a producer, because he didn't run any of his own controls or anything, and he had a producer that would just point at him and he'd start talking like just, like it was something he'd been doing his whole life. And it was so natural to him. And I watched him and I thought, I think I can do this. But I was relatively shy. And you wouldn't know it by looking at me now. Because I'm doing this TV show and, on the radio as well, and emceeing a bunch of events here in the community. But I decided to go to Drake University, which was where my dad went to college. And since I was my family originally from Des Moines, I thought, why not? I'll go to Drake and get a broadcasting degree. And while I was at Drake, it's probably around my sophomore year at Drake, I got a call from KIOA Radio in Des Moines. And they asked me if I would come down and work part-time at the radio station. So it was kind of crazy because I was taking a full load of broadcasting classes and also working, overnights or, weekends at KIOA. And it was quite a load. And not only that, while I was working there, I was also doing an internship at WHO TV. So I had a lot of broadcasting things going on. Quickly realized while I was at WHO television, the two things happened. Number one, I started losing my hair. So I kind of figured maybe television wasn't for me. So I started losing my hair, and not only that, I realized that television news did not give you the freedom that being a disc jockey gave you. You could, being a DJ is kind of a wild and crazy thing. So I kind of decided I liked that route a little bit more, since not only that was it more fun, but it's what my dad did. So I worked at KIOA after I graduated college. They hired me full-time. I was there till about 1993. So I was there total in Des Moines about 6 years. And then I've been to other markets. I've been to Ames twice. I've been to 2 Ames radio stations. I've been to Newton, Ottumwa, and I've been with KFJB almost 13 years, but it's different at KFJB because I'm not a traditional disc jockey. We don't play any music. So when they asked me to come on, when they hired me at KFJB almost 13 years ago, they said, do you think you could be a talk show host? I thought, wow, I've never done anything like that, because DJ's always talking real short segments between songs. It is, that was, and this is, and here's the temperature, the time and the temperature. And there's not, I won't say there's not a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of thought that goes into it, but you're not talking for long segments of time. And a lot of times you're not interviewing anybody. So at KFJB, not only am I talking for pretty long segments of time, I'm interviewing a lot of people. So I had to really kind of sharpen those skills, and after almost 13 years, I'm kind of branched out a little bit, because now I'm hosting this show when you're not hosting it. We've switched seats today. So I've branched out a little bit, and I'm doing longer form interviews, not only on radio but also on television.
Yeah, and that's the next thing I was going to talk to you about. Discover Marshalltown. I'm sitting in for you.
Yeah.
Interviewing you as a guest, which is different for you.
It's weird.
So what do you think of hosting Discover Marshalltown television now that you've been doing radio for so many years?
I like it. Craig Schwartz was really kind and to let me take over for Denny. Denny Grabenbauer hosted this show for many, many years, and I am very honored to do it. It's not totally different from anything that I've done before. I did programs like this when I was in college, but that was a long time ago. So I have to kind of get used to where the camera is. Other than that, I don't find it that difficult. I try to do research as to who I'm interviewing, so I don't come in here completely cold. I'm sure Craig is tired of me emailing him saying, who are we having on? Because I like to research the people that I interview, whether it be on the radio or on television, so I don't sound like a complete fool, or that I don't run out of questions, which sometimes happens with a longer show like this.
Yeah, so that's cool, and we thank you for being a part of it and hosting the show now. And I should remind our viewers that we are hosting this show here in the MCC Broadcasting Department TV studio. So, and this is the area that you also teach in and I teach in for our broadcasting digital media program. So usually we have a lot of students in here helping with productions, and they will probably be helping out with Discover Marshalltown and maybe helping Craig, who pretty much produces everything for McTV now, but gives my students an opportunity to help out with TV programming as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a great learning tool to not only help behind the scenes with this program, but also do some of the stuff that you help facilitate with the sports broadcasting.
Right.
In the gymnasium, and it's a really, really good program. I mean, technology has come so far from when I went to college and when you went to school as well. We were editing on 3/4 inch tape. Remember those days when we would edit video on 3/4 inch tape, and editing audio tape on reel-to-reel tape with a razor blade. It's come so far. Everything is digital
You're
now.
dating us now.
I know, a little bit. A little bit. People come into the KFJB studio to record a commercial, and they'll look and they'll ask what a reel-to-reel machine. They'll see a reel-to-reel machine, and it still actually has a reel-to-reel tape on it, and they'll go, "What's that for?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's strictly for show. We don't edit on that anymore." But to edit on a reel-to-reel block, it was quite time consuming.
Yeah.
It's come. I mean, now with the program that we teach here, I mean, like I said, if you can cut and paste, you can learn how to digitally edit something.
Yeah. And when we say cut and paste, we're talking about the modern version of copying and pasting on a computer,
Right.
opposed to the reel-to-reel.
Yeah, exactly. It's come so far.
Okay. Well, we've talked a lot about broadcasting and your career and KFJB, and getting to know you over the last few years. I know you're kind of a history buff. Can you talk a little bit about that and some of this? When you're not at the radio station, what are you doing?
Well, a few years ago, I guess maybe it was more than a few years ago, I just kind of got a keen interest in Civil War history. Why, I don't know. In school, I wasn't particularly fond of history. I just all of a sudden, maybe it was a midlife crisis, I don't know, but I started kind of studying up on the Civil War. So I developed a pretty keen interest in Iowa's involvement in the Civil War. Sure. And I also, originally being from Iowa, but not growing up here, I wanted to know a lot more about Iowa's history. So I started learning, because the internet's a wonderful thing. You can learn so much. I started learning about Iowa's history. And I eventually ended up writing for the Iowa History Journal, which is a publication, which is published every, I think, 2 or 3 months. And I've written, probably a handful of articles over the years for the Iowa History Journal. It takes an awful lot of time to do the research and then write an article. And you, I don't always have a lot of time to just sit at a computer and write an article. Strangely enough, if I do take a vacation from the radio station, I will spend a week sometimes writing an article for the Iowa History Journal. But it's been a while since I've done that. But yeah, I have a really, I have quite a passion for Iowa history.
In regard to Civil War history, have you ever been to a reenactment?
I have. My wife grew up in a little town in Tennessee called Selmer, Tennessee, and it's right near the Shiloh battlefield.
Oh, yes.
I mean, it's right near the Battle of Shiloh. In fact, you could probably drive 8 miles from where she was born and you're at Shiloh. So, and Shiloh is one of the biggest and bloodiest wars of the Civil War, and Iowa had a very heavy involvement in that particular battle. They credit a lot of Iowa farmers, Illinois farmers, with helping to defend an area of Shiloh called the Hornet's Nest. And it was called the Hornet's Nest. A lot of people think it was because the bullets were just whizzing by these soldiers so fast it sounded like a hornet, and they were being fired upon so much you would hear this vroom, 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 and they said it sounded like a hornet, and they credit Iowa soldiers with helping to defend that area. So when I go down to visit my in-laws in Tennessee, which is about once a summer, I will always make a drive down to Shiloh, and they always have a Civil War reenactment, and it's a lot bigger area than what you think. It's a national park, you know, it's a national monument right now, a lot like Gettysburg. Just a huge, in fact, Gettysburg and Shiloh are two of the bigger and bloodiest battles of the Civil War.
Wow, that's pretty neat
Yeah.
history, though, to learn about that
Yeah.
and actually be where it actually happened, you know.
It's pretty neat, and it's neat. They give tours, they give guided tours down there. I've done the tour, but I actually prefer, you can drive around in your car. That's how big the park is. You can drive around in your car, and they basically have a map that you can do your own tour. And I do that. In fact, Iowa's monument, because most Civil War battlefields, big battlefields, will have monuments to all of the states that participated. Iowa's monument is the tallest monument at Shiloh Battlefield. The state of Iowa, because it's up to the state to give money towards its monument. Iowa wanted its monument to be the tallest and the biggest, and I think probably the most recognized. It's very, very big.
That's neat.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Okay, great. Well, I wanted to hear a little bit about that. Your interest in history and the Civil War and other things. Before you talked a little bit about, not only did you take over for Denny for this Discover Marshalltown show, but some of the MC, Master of Ceremony things around town. Could you tell us a little bit about what you've done in the groups that you've kind of were the MC for here in town?
Sure. I think it all kind of started a number of years ago with the barbecue festival that we had. We don't have the barbecue festival anymore, but I was asked to be the MC for that particular event, and so I did that for a number of years through the Barbecue Association and the Chamber Convention and Visitors Bureau. So I emceed that, and that was several bands every night, a 2-night commitment to that. So I did that for a number of years. And then more recently, I've done Oktoberfest. I've emceed several events up at the Coliseum. In fact, I'm going to MC a Saturday night event coming up at this particular Oktoberfest. The Inner Light is going to play. They're a Marshalltown favorite from the late 60s. And I was asked to MC that event. I emceed a show, a fundraiser for the Iowa Rock and Roll Music Association. I think it was last year or maybe the year before at the Coliseum. I was asked to MC that. I've just done all kinds of little shows over the years. It's kind of strange because I don't have any problem doing something like this or getting it up in front of either several hundred or several thousand people. I usually don't have any problem getting up and talk. But if you get me up in front of my church congregation and ask me to read a Bible verse, I'm all kinds of worried. It's crazy. But yeah, I've emceed a lot of things and taken over some of the duties for Denny Grabenbauer, who's kind of hanging him up after all these years.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I can understand why you'd be worried about talking in church.
It's so
getting
crazy.
hit by lightning or something.
It is so weird to get up there in front of my congregation. There's 200 people or so, and I'm sitting there reading a Bible verse, and I'm literally shaking before I go up on the altar, and my wife's like, "What's your problem?
Yeah, really.
You talk to thousands of people all the time," and I'm like, "I know." So it's kind of crazy. In fact, one of the bigger events I ever emceed, I helped to introduce the Beach Boys years and years and years ago at a concert they did at a beach. It was actually a lake concert in Des Moines. When I was at KIOA in Des Moines, they were looking for somebody to introduce the Beach Boys. And I'm sitting with our radio station, and a guy drives up in a golf cart, and he goes, "Okay, we need somebody to introduce the Beach Boys to our radio station." And our promotions director said, "Well, Kyle, you know the most about beach music. Why don't you go up and introduce them?" And I got up on stage. This was a very big stage. And the Beach Boys were right at the height of their comeback with Kokomo. Remember that song?
Sure, yeah.
From the Cocktail soundtrack. It went to #1 in the country in 1987. So they were a big act again. I look out, And there are literally thousands of people out there, and that was a little scary. That was my very first time ever emceeing, and I didn't really MC. I just introduced the Beach Boys. It wasn't, I wasn't up there for very long, but
Still,
it was quite scary, and that was my baptism by fire. The very first time I ever introduced a band, and a lot of times when you're the MC, they just want you to get off stage. They want you to. They want you to introduce the band or whomever it is, and then get off.
Get out of the way.
They don't want you to tell stories or anything. And I've done that where one year I had to MC at a comedy club in Des Moines. It was the Funny Bone Comedy Club, long time ago. And we're talking 25, maybe almost 30 years ago. And I got up there, and I don't know, I can't remember any jokes. So I said to the guy that owned the club, I said, well, what do you want me to do? He goes, literally introduce whoever it is and get off the stage.
Yeah.
They don't care about you.
Yeah, that's right.
So I've had a few big gigs over the years,
And our producer, Craig Schwartz, said that maybe we should talk about some of the perks that the radio people get.
Oh, sure.
And I know, like, your colleague, Todd Collins, has gone down to the Speedway a lot. He's taken some of my students as interns down there. But you radio people really get some nice perks once in a while, because you guys have to put up with some tough hours and early mornings. But could you talk a little bit about some of those throughout your career, seeing pretty cool stuff or meeting people and things like that?
I would be glad to, because I've been very blessed with a lot of times meeting my musical heroes, either meeting them in person or interviewing them on the phone.
Right.
I've been so lucky. Well, you get a lot of perks. You get to go to concerts a lot of times. A lot of times you get music that you like or have wanted. I work at a talk station, so I don't get as much music as I used to. But you used to get the occasional CD that you wanted. That's not something that I do much anymore. But I am very lucky to go to shows of artists that I really enjoy. Most recently, I interviewed Tommy James at Tommy James and the Shondells. I mean, everybody remembers Monet Monet. I Think We're Alone Now, Hanky Panky. He was playing the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa, and it was, I think, in July, early July. And I've always enjoyed his music, so I thought, what the heck? I'm going to email his manager and see if I could do an on-air interview with him. And I got an email response almost immediately. It said, sure, Tommy would love to do an interview with you. So I interviewed Tommy James, and then I got to go to the show and I got to meet him. So it was kind of cool to meet your musical hero, one of them, and I've been very lucky. But yeah, a lot of times it's tickets to a show or a CD or behind the scenes stuff. You get to go to certain events that maybe other people don't get to go to. Yeah,
and I know you guys, since you're a talk radio station, you of course talk to the mayor and other prominent people in the community, but have you tried to set up anything with Hillary or Trump yet?
I have not.
Because that could be big, huge.
It could be big. I did see Hillary Clinton. Actually, I saw both candidates. I saw Hillary Clinton when she was just starting to think about campaigning. She hadn't really officially campaigned yet. She was over at the coffee house at the Tremont. She came to the Tremont and did kind of a round table thing, and the media we were talking about the media. They let the media into that, but they didn't let anybody else.
Oh, I see.
So I went over there and I got to see her. I mean, real up close and personal. And Trump, I got not very close to, because he was at the Iowa State Fair last summer, and I saw this swarm of people going down the concourse, and I thought, well, which presidential candidate is this? So I kind of elbowed my way through the crowd, and it was Donald Trump. Yeah. But that's about as close. I seriously doubt they would do an interview with me. They're gearing more towards the national talk shows, the Sean Hannitys.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, you could always email Hillary too.
I could.
But make sure you're on a secured server.
Yeah, we've got to make sure it doesn't go to our personal server.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But anyway, well, we just had to throw in a couple slams at Trump and Hillary. since everybody else is, right?
Exactly,
So, well,
yeah.
the producer just gave us the 1 minute sign, so I think we need to wrap up. Any final thing you want to mention?
No, I'm very grateful to be on this show, and I'm grateful to host it. Thank you guys for having me. It's weird being in this chair.
Okay, it's great having you here.
Thank you.
And this is Kyle Martin. I'm Steve Muntz. You're watching Discover Marshalltown. Thanks for joining us.